Okay. Thanks to Pooty, we got some time here. I can go back to the board meeting. still, it still cracks me up. I'm looking. This is where they're talking about how lovely Kelsey is, and I'm just going on and on and on a little bit. I'm surprised I didn't take it off. I really am.
Storm. You know, in my working career, I don't think I've ever used some words such as historic, unprecedented, once in a lifetime. It's become way too frequent here in the last 12 months between COVID and riots and deep and deserved social unrest, the winter storms, the forest fires that Director Way referenced earlier.
Yeah, Kelsey, you did. You did come at a good time, didn't you? But that hasn't changed your anti-union stance, so that's why you got all thumbs down from me, buddy. If you didn't do all that anti-union shit, I would have given you a thumbs up. But you did all, you know, you're doing all this anti-union stuff, and it's not necessary.
It's been quite something, and a lot of this all happened at once. What didn't hit us was just what we had just a few weekends ago. And even if we go back to January, what this agency is going through, like everybody else, and the insurrection federally, this is just a stress-filled time. But out of our challenges comes some amazing things.
Tell me this.
And just recently, as we all were hit with this other large storm, it was a frightening winter storm, which the region hasn't seen in decades. And in fact, the CEO of PGE, a colleague of mine, Maria Pope, she said it's the worst impact situation they've had in 40 years here. That's PGE. So they're still recovering. We still have several bus routes that are still having to be altered because of trees and other disruptions down the road. So we're still feeling the remnants of what one might think is just a regular storm. Far from it. The amount of ice that came down actually brought our system to a halt. Probably the first time in our history. And it includes both MAX and bus. It hit us from every direction. Overhead wires that were arcing. Trains lost power. Windshields iced over literally in front of the operators while they were driving the trains. The wipers couldn't keep up and such. Heated switch froze. The switches to go back and forth on the train tracks. A Ruby yard became coated in one giant impassable sheet of ice. Yeah. In fact, I'm just going to ask if
that was
Kimberly
good.
Or Jeff, you can bring up the couple of pictures I'm going to show you right now.
Did you see the picture of the Ruby yard? That was really something, man. So much for your light rail.
I think for the public at home, what's going on behind the scenes a little bit. And just a couple photographs, I think, start to tell the picture, which amongst we all didn't go anywhere.
They left it up
but
there.
It shows you what.
Hopefully, I'm not the only one that made comments as this meeting went on. Not me.
Our team was having to deal with behind the scenes, and I normally don't do that. But if you take one picture, in Canada we call that a hockey rink.
Yeah, look at that. That's a hockey rink, all right. Do we cover this? You think they'd have some way to prevent that from happening, but nope.
But that is actually, the top left picture, is actually our Ruby yard, our main rail yard, and you can barely see the tracks. And that's what employees there was no ability to actually execute service. And so the other one in the bottom right.
Here back east, we have this thing called rock salt. Okay, it melts ice. Okay, you might want to try it. Our trees are still alive, by the way.
Is also, you'd have to zoom in a bit, but you can start to see all the frozen ice over all the overhead catenary wires. Next pictures. So here's an example where literally the snow is up against the drifts, up against our services we provide, where they were frozen in time. This is one of these types of events that you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. So we had some people actually, unfortunately, got stranded out there. Our operators got stranded out there. And they were out there for many, many hours. And we actually sent some buses out. I think in 3 cases, we sent buses out to rescue people off trains. And they actually got stuck themselves. So this is such a unique circumstance and so significant that we literally became paralyzed even in our own recovery. from 711 to 211 to 411 to 911, no fire truck, police, or ambulance
I think we heard
responders
this,
were even responding to our calls.
but let's hear it again.
So it was, we were truly paralyzed, if we will. Thank you. If you can just take the, actually, just move on to the next photograph to show a couple of trees down as well. There. So this is an example, the things that go, gee, why isn't the train coming? Well, these are the examples you're seeing here is maybe why not. And so we're so dependent on all of our partners who did an amazing job. We had so many of our, from PBOT, our partnership there, they had trouble getting their employees to work, as we did as well. But boy, did they sure do their darn best. I'm going to give you one example of that from one of our employees that I thought was just, I said this at my recent town hall. It was just a great example of some of the heroics that went on. For example, we had one of our public safety manager, Justin Dillon. He was assigned to our EOC, or we call Emergency Operations Center. An example of going above and beyond is an unsung hero. You know, his day started at 3 o'clock in the morning, a little bit earlier than normal on a Saturday. He used his personal truck to rescue 3 stranded rail operators. He pulled 3 non-revenue or regular vehicles from the snow and ice bank. He recovered another 14 Trimet vehicles back to Trimet parking lots, all basically before he got to work. And so it's just one example of many of what goes on with the show behind the scenes. I think we saw this.
Come on, where do we end?
This is just one example of many that our team put on. So I can't thank our employees enough for what they have endured, what they went through, and what they delivered, and taking care of our customers. I also would like to thank and apologize to our customers. Some customers we could not take care of in the way our heartbeats wanted us to.
No, you couldn't.
And so we didn't.
Hey, you hear this?
Get it all right.
Raindrops work. Did you hear this? I'll have to link you.
Those few days for sure. And so I do want to apologize to each and every one of them because we gave our best, but it wasn't enough to get you where you needed to go. So we are in the customer service business, and we are going to be doing lessons learned. We always do, because there's always things that we did really well and should be amazingly proud of, but there are things we did not get right. But that's what agencies do, is part to rethink about how do you do it better next time, because we live in this greenhouse world now where it's going to happen again. And so we need to learn from that and learn quickly. So anyhow, we are back in service. I think it is just one example where Mother Nature always gets to make the final say. And she sure did that day. And but we're back up, we're running well. So the team worked tirelessly for this. So
the team is great.
I think that's probably all I want to say there on that one. The second item I'm just going to move to, if we can, is an update you all on COVID. We go from one challenge to another, but being the resiliency agency we do, on we go. There's some good news on COVID, and that's the portion of my report here is going to be about the vaccines today. I want to start on a positive note here, which has historically been quite challenging. There's still lots we don't know. But our lift transit operators are now eligible to receive the vaccine, and they are on their way getting that vaccine. So that's wonderful news, particularly for those who have health conditions and such. So it's the start for us. OHA, or the Oregon Health Authority, moved the operators into this phase 1 category. Understanding the work that they do provides assistance to those sick and medically fragile. So they are, in fact, in some semblance, an extension of some of the healthcare services that we all need to provide. The operators are not required to take the vaccine, but those who choose so, that's a personal decision for us. We are not requiring that at all. But we strongly will encourage people to be informed about it. We would ask that to make the decision that's right for them and their families when the time comes. And the operators in this case are contractors, and they work for First Transit. So I want to thank them all, and thanks for getting the shots. We are still waiting for the governor's ground order and the OHA when the rest of our employees will be eligible to receive vaccines. We are in touch every day. with the OHA, but we have not got our signal yet, or for the bell to ring for us to deploy our readiness. But when the time comes, we'll be ready. Also, a few weeks ago, we asked all employees to fill out a questionnaire to let us know, firstly, whether they're willing to take the vaccine, whether they plan to get through it through Trimet or by some other means, and if they have underlying health conditions that would move them ahead of the line of eligibility. So, interestingly enough, we launched this just earlier last week, and we have had over 1,000 of our employees in 2.5 days fill out the form, which is terrific, showing the awareness and the importance of this. So that's very informative to us in terms of helping us deploy limited window shot times when they're available. We don't want to lose an empty slot that we can actually help somebody else in. So this is just an example of the many steps we're taking to ensure we're ready when the time comes. The next item up, I just wanted to give you a quick update on January's ridership. We have provided about 3 million rides in January. Despite the numbers of being down over a year, we were still provided millions of really essential trips. Looking at the numbers, we were down 61% from January 2020.
60%.
Bus trips were down just over 60%.
Oh,
Max
way
saw
down.
a 62.5% decline.
I'll tell you, there's more action than ever on the scanner. There's 60% decline in ridership and a 60% increase in scanner action.
Nugget, I always look at in the analysis in here that the frequent service and off-peak service continue to perform a little bit better and operated in January at about 50% down compared to this time last year. So this is a great example of we have to take care of the immediate things like the storm, like COVID, to the service of the day, but we also have to take care of what are we ready for the ridership recovery when the time comes, let alone as the long-term strategy of the agency. So it's dealing with the short, medium, and long-term parts of this business, and this is a great example of that when the recovery time comes, the team is doing a significant amount of work, and I really want to thank Jason and his team to look at things like loyalty programs, etc. So when the time comes that we move back to herd immunity or better, that people can come back out and start using the system, that we're ready with rider recovery.
Herd immunity, get the cows out.
Is still going on
Get the cattle going.
The next and last item I have for you as an update today is really around transit-oriented development. So as part of my commitment to you, as we put together the long-term policy and strategy for transit-oriented development, is to bring back quarterly.
My brother Michael went out ahead of me.
So this is a long-term strategy.
Get that cattle.
There you go. Today articulated, but there's a lot of work going on. Now, I want to just call on Bob Hastings, Lance Ers, and Guy Ben. And before I even let them speak, I want to also acknowledge Bob Hastings, who's going to be retiring in not too short a time.
Yeah, we saw this.
For all his amazing work for this.
Yes, he's been wonderful. Moving forward.
Across the whole transit system, across the region.
All right, here we go. That's right. This is where we were.
Etc. So
yeah. We were at Bob Hastings.
Back to herd immunity or better, that people
can
come back and start using the system, that we're ready with a rider recovery program. So just want to let the board know that work is still going on.
I'm just sitting here.
The next and last item I have for you as an update today is really around transit-oriented development. So as part of my commitment to you, as we put together.
The last thing that needs to be of concern right now is transit-oriented development. But we know how this goes, These industrial complexes will not change their directions. They're already funding all of this, and that's what they're going to do.
The long-term policy and strategy for transit-oriented development is to bring back quarterly updates to you.
So they don't need.
This is a long-term strategy.
This is the, as I've been saying for years, and you're all bored and nobody cares what I think anyway. Trimet is a property development agency, and they've been that way for a long, long time, and that's what they're doing. They're developing property. That's their main focus.
Of your kind board words today articulated, but there's a lot of work going on, and now I want to just call on Bob Hastings, Lance Ers, and Guy Ben. And before I even let them speak, I want to also acknowledge Bob Hastings, who's going to be retiring in not too short of time.
How long has
All
he
his
been there? I think he's
amazing
been there
work
like 30
for this
years.
agency. He is
He's been there
just
forever.
an absolute great leader and contributor.
Great
And
leader,
if
yeah.
you
They're all
ever need a
wonderful.
storyteller
Everybody,
around
all of
Trimet's
you are
history and
wonderful.
this region's history, he is your man. So with that, I'm now going to turn over to the three of those gentlemen to cover off the update on TOD.
Thank you, Doug. This is Bob. And I'm
You're
here
all
with
wonderful.
Guy
Thank
and
God for you.
Lance, and we have some slides to share that hopefully Jeff can pull up. But as that's happening, we want to sort of opening comments about briefing the board on the TOD program that we're building on the TOD guidelines, which you ratified last year in 2020. And we recognize that in that process that there's still lots more work to move forward, moving from the vision to the reality.
What is he anyway? Is he like an architect or something?
And
Who is this
there
guy?
we go. Thank you, Jeff.
He's got his little hat on. I like that. There he is.
The overarching need was identified in the guidelines that we are working to create a community around our transit stops, primarily on the MAX system. But we will be looking at capacity corridors as the program moves forward. Next slide, please. In order to do that, we had to find some funding. We had a bit of a budget just to get the three of us up and running as a program.
Yep.
And as we started to look out in 2019 and 2020, and thanks to the wonderful work of our colleague Cora Potter, we saw that there was an opportunity through ODOT's Transportation Growth Management grant, and we applied for that and received that, and we've been working.
Okay, let's look. Hold on, stop.
To bring that.
Okay, $250,000 from ODOT, $35,000 match of the Trimet staff. Let's look at this. Objectives: to translate Trimet's TOD guidelines into user-friendly, publicly accessible TOD plan. You know what they used to call this, in case you don't know? This used to be called Agenda 21, but they don't call that. They've changed it now. There's Agenda 30 or something, or I forgot. That they don't use that terminology. It's part of the great reset that we've all been hearing about. This was always part of it. Was called the pack and stack plan. You stick all of the SERFs into these boxes along the public transportation lines, and those SERFs would then go to the various billionaires who own, like Amazon warehouse will be on a Trimet line, for example, and that was the long-term plan. And these are 50-year plans, don't forget. These are not. These oligarchs think big, you know, and they make money all the way along.
Into fruition. We're just getting that kick started this month and really becoming active in March. But the opportunity with that grant was to look across the whole transit system, across the region. And in simple parlance, what we are using this grant for.
Ozzy, if you're going to do your other work, turn off your camera. Okay, so we can see you're not paying attention.
Is to take the aspirations of the TOD guidelines and work to make those real. Looking at the dimensions of what would work in terms of market viability, but also what is going to meet the needs of the various communities across the region. And as we've heard time and time again, and as our board represents, one size does not fit all. And yet we need to have a way to have a kind of a consistent approach as we begin to plan our strategy for transfer and development at the different station areas. We want to also leverage, that's a word we'll be using a lot, the existing investments that have been made, obviously through capital projects, but also through the service and the evolution of the service in the region. So this is a dynamic approach, and we're looking to create a model where we can engage with folks in
What am I
the
supposed to do with
region,
this?
get the advice, the counsel of people who are very engaged in livable communities across the region, but then also get the specific input from stakeholders who are very much associated with very specific station areas. We will look for a couple of pilot projects to really articulate how one of Ozzie Gonzalez's favorite words, how a typology, meaning how does the aspirations in the guidelines really begin to land on the ground and start to articulate not just kind of this is the baseline of what is being done, but here is the aspiration of what could be done. The board, you have articulated that one of the great attributes of General Manager Kelsey is giving us the vision to shoot for. And this work is about looking over the horizon and seeing what is possible into the future. And by bringing people into this process, this is not just Trimet dictating what the solution is, but Trimet helping to set the table where folks in our community and at these station areas can really develop what that looks like. We're looking at best case lessons from BART and other transit authorities across the United States and internationally. We want to create, was said earlier this morning, a world-class approach, a really best in practice program. We look to develop these over this coming year, and as Doug and I both sort of wave goodbye, but we know that the work will carry forward and will build. Next slide, please. Again, thanks to Cora's help, we saw that there was another opportunity, this time from the Federal Transportation Administration, their own program to provide funding to look at TransitOriented Development along a particular corridor. And this is working hand in glove with the Red Line extension from PDX out to Hillsborough. And this allows us to take a corridor specific approach.
All right, let's look at this fucking
so
shit.
ODOT is a very...
I don't want to hear what he says. Okay, red line, this whole red line, what a fucking waste of $700,000 pilot grant funding for station area planning. Yes, this is why they're always so hot for this, because this is how they get paid. This is how all these Trimet bureaucrats get paid. They plan. It costs a fortune to plan this shit. Objective to deliver comprehensive station area plans for the middle ring stations. Jesus, what a waste. God.
Very broad regional, but this is going to be looking specifically at the corridor, and we're going to be looking specifically on both the east and west parts of the Red Line extension. We know that there's a real opportunity, again, which Doug Kelsey brought to the region's attention in the Gateway district and neighborhood. Also the Park Rose Park and Ride Station. So East County, which is in crying need for some real action, we want to work again with partners in the neighborhoods and organizations, as well as our jurisdictional partners. In fact, this grant actually has people at different agencies in the region putting their own funding in with staff support to realize this effort. City of Portland has made a substantial contribution or promised to do that, as well as the City of Beaverton and the City of Hillsborough and Washington County and Metro. So with these regional partners, we're going to be looking east and west in places where we have made that investment, but we haven't translated it necessarily into the kind of density in some of our station areas. What is the result that we're looking for in these studies? It's to set up what could be that over-the-horizon opportunity for development and repurposing and revitalizing and re-envisioning our own transit properties, but in the process of doing that, seeing these as catalytic for the surrounding neighborhoods and communities that they serve. So I'll end those remarks.
Okay, what he's just said is you can't really, he says it very tactfully. Yours in the business. What he's trying to say is this is how we intend to gentrify the area. Okay, that's what he's trying to say, but he doesn't want to say it.
to questions or suggestions.
This is just another
Thank you.
gentrification project.
I
Director
couldn't find
Gonzalez.
the, thanks. I couldn't find the hand raising function fast enough, so I'm relying on camera. Thank you. Thanks, Bob, for presenting the update. You know me, I'm an impatient chap, so I see the station area planning is underway. When do you foresee that some of the ideas that come out of the station area planning might translate into potential projects or invitations for people to start actually doing stuff? When does that happen?
The short answer is that would begin to happen towards the end of 2021, certainly by 2022. In fact, Commissioner Gonzalez, what you're looking for is exactly what we want to be able to articulate to folks. Here is the opportunity. And in this opportunity, we've already done the legwork with our jurisdictional partners that there is a path for this to move forward and to have them participate in that vision in order to create the success for moving these efforts forward. I think in the past we've seen where sometimes good ideas, if they don't align with what is that particular jurisdiction's either needs or their regulations, that you can run afoul of that timing. So this is really about not knocking down roadblocks, but looking for that leaning in where people understand that by making some changes, perhaps regulatorily, or with financial participation, or some other obstacle being moved out of the way, we can move into this sooner rather than just being a planning study.
Thank you. And a follow-up final question about the role other agencies, other jurisdictions will have in this station area planning process, since they potentially have vested interests or obstacles. What role do you see them playing?
I think, and thank you for that question. So I'm going to highlight the City of Portland and the Bureau of Planning, the Bureau of Development Services, Prosper Portland, and the Bureau of Transportation, all of whom have been engaged in this conversation, all of whom will participate in these efforts, all of whom have expressed that willingness to look at what can happen at these very particular neighborhoods and stations, recognizing that without their active participation, that they're not going to receive the benefits of this catalytic opportunity. Same thing follows with great involvement in the City of Beaverton. The City of Hillsborough is very enthusiastic about this opportunity too.
I might just jump in on this one. Is not just locally, one of the areas that we're not ready for this conversation fully yet, but down the road, and I just don't want this to be lost, I think there's an immense opportunity here that we've got some investigative work to do with the real estate development partners themselves around how, in fact, we approach the state and other partners around tax concessions for development at the state level, particularly around where Trimet is directly involved or is a key strategic partner, to accelerate and raise the viability up so we, in fact, can get to more accelerated affordable housing and development. So I think that's one nugget I'll leave for the agency. We were not ready for it yet, but I've had discussions with real estate developers around this exact issue, and it comes to mind where there's a tremendous uplift opportunity where there's prosperity to share. And so I think this is an area that can really position Trimet and the acceleration program down the road, not just at the regional level, but at the state level as well. So any other questions? If not, I'll conclude, but just want to make sure people...
Doug, this is Bruce. I just had a question. I want to make sure that Bob or the other staffers heard the testimony from Doug Allen this morning, who was very concerned about the transit area development, oriented development in the gateway and around the station there impacting operations. So I just want to make sure we reach out to understand their concerns. It looks like you've got a great community engagement process, and so I assume that will be done.
Thank you.
Correct. Yep. And to Doug Allen's comment, I think he specifically also referenced the 11th Avenue turnaround. For those who know it, we've got like 3 tracks there turnaround. That is very much a piece of real estate that's in play. We may not need all those tracks, and you can build over top of it, where you look at things like air rights. So those are things that are already on our mental drawing board as opportunities that Doug correctly outlined today. So yes, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Board President, that concludes my report and my final report. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your report and your final report. We're sad to say. All right, with that, what I'm thinking is we'll go through the consent agenda, and I don't know how people are feeling, but maybe we need a break because I know that at least 3 of the board members have been on this since about 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to go on to the consent agenda and then determine if we want a break. So there's 2 items on the consent agenda today, and for those watching, the consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be approved by a single board motion. But any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda for a discussion or questions by requesting such action prior to the consideration of this portion of the agenda. And again, there's 2 items. The first is approval of the board meeting minutes for January 27th, 2021. And then the final one is just one that says we'll read ordinances by title only. So is there anything on the consent agenda any board member would like to have removed?
No, Mr. Chairman, but I do have a comment I just wanted to share with Kimberly, that there's a typo at the end of the paragraph under section where it talks about resolution 21-01-01. And it says the last sentence there before we move to action was steps necessary to, it says being, and it should say begin the search process. It's just a typo that needs to be corrected.
No big deal.
Thank you for that.
Who cares?
Any other typos or changes to the Okay.
I just have a question.
Sure.
So if I wanted to lift up a particular resolution under resolutions, would this be the right time to bring it up for discussion or not?
I'm sorry, restate that, Director Wade.
So if I wanted to lift up a particular resolution that the board will be considering today, can I bring that up now as
yes, you can.
Request for discussion, or do I need to wait until we get to that resolution?
Well, we're going to get to it's a resolution that is on today's agenda you're talking about?
Correct. I'm specifically naming resolution 21-02-07, lifting that up because we just faced a winter storm. I think we need more time as a board to really consider this before we vote on it today. And I have other additional reasons, but I just wanted to ask if this would be the appropriate time to talk about that particular resolution.
Well, I think what we should do is let's take action on the consent agenda if we can get that action, and let's talk about if we want to change the order or talk about any resolutions. But what it sounds like is maybe you'd like to get that talked about early on in the resolutions and dispose of one way or the other. Is that fair?
Yes, thank you, President Warner. I don't do a lot of these, so I just wanted to make sure I was following the right rules.
Okay,
but
we'll
yes, that sounds good.
All right, good. So on the consent agenda, is there anything else on the consent agenda that people have concerns or questions about? Hearing none, then, is there a motion to approve the consent?
Second motion. Go.
Noted by Director Edwards.
So moved.
Have motions are second?
Second, Linda.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then. Did somebody else have a question? Nope. All those then in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented and changed by amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. All right, so what I'd like to do is I'm seeing people raising their hands wanting to take a break. So why don't we take a 10-minute break, come back and get to the resolutions. And what I will do, Director Way, is we will move resolution 21-02-07 up to the beginning, and we can talk about that first. All right?
All right, so we
Thank
cut
you.
here.
That sounds
Where are we at?
wonderful.
All right. Let's have a 10-minute break.
All right.
I've got 10:48, so
we'll go a little more. Look, there's your term is up. Look, look at it. It's funny. Yes, Bruce, we can see you. Hello, Brucey. Don't do anything stupid. I'm watching. There's Brucey. Hey, Brucey, baby. The technocrat right there, buddy. City manager for what? 20 years? Who knows how long? Big fat pension from the government. Nice insider for the board. Make sure everything goes smoothly there. Keeps it going. Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, it happens. It happens, but it's still hard. Your clothes won't be white. I tell anyone that comes into my house, no matter how much I clean, don't wear dark clothes. You're gonna look like a fur ball when you leave.
Yeah, boy, Linda, that's great shit we got
all
there.
Right, well, it's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to call us back into order. We're down to our regular agenda item number 4, which are our resolutions.
Oh, look.
Hobo
made a comment here.
Director Wade to
right
move
there.
Resolution 21-02-07 forward for discussion. And I think we will do that unless the board objects. All right, then I'm going to say let's move on to that resolution. In order for us to figure out whether we want to do any deferrals or changes on this, I think it's important we have the staff report and the folks who will let you do the presentation today give the report. So, Mr. General Manager, are you ready? And is the staff ready to present this item?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Oh, the fucking cops!
President and members of the board.
All right.
The resolution before you today is
wait a minute.
authorization for.
Let's stop. I want to hear this, but I'm going to separate the video to a different video.